From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. A protest in Chile demanding justice for the killing of a Mapuche man by the national police turned violent on Thursday. Fighting between protesters and police broke out in Santiago as one officer was left unconscious. Water cannons and tear gas were used and several people were arrested. The protest was the latest in a series of rallies following the killing of Camilo Catrillanca last month. On Monday, Mapuche leaders called on the president to demand the resignation of Interior Minister Andrés Chadwick over the murder. Workers' organizations have taken to the streets of Quito, Ecuador, against the government's latest economic measures. Our correspondent, Denise Herrera, was at the demonstration and brings us more.
Ecuador's Work Unity Front and several social organizations of workers are marching today in Quito against the latest economic measures announced by the government of Lenin Moreno. The Minister of Economy, Richard Martinez, announced a new increase in the price of gasoline. The price of the gasoline was 1.48 per gallon, and now the new price is 1.85 per gallon. The social organization and the workers are against the latest economic measure. They said that the government is taking neoliberal decisions that affect the Ecuadorians. They also said they are asking to stop with this measure, and they are asking to President Lenin Moreno to start thinking in the Ecuadorian families. According to the Minister of Economy, Richard Martinez, this new increase is part of an optimization of the state process led by the Ecuadorian President Lenin Moreno. However, the organization said that if they can talk with President Lenin Moreno, they will continue with this struggle to defend their rights and to stop with these economic measures.
Denise Herrera following the protest here in Quito. She also spoke to some of the marchers about why they decided to take to the streets.
We are here today due to recent announcements, and this is a call on the part of all workers in response to the gasoline hike. This hike will have repercussions for all basic necessity products. On top of that, the basic family income is $700, and with $8 extra, we can't do much as reach 0.1% of the prices that have been raised.
This march has been convoked by citizens, all of us who are the people, to defend ourselves from this neoliberal government, which imposed prescriptions so that we sign with the International Monetary Fund and further add to the global crisis like in France, here in the country. Now we have gone out to defend life. That's why we are here.
A former high-level Colombian official has been found dead in Bogotá before he could complete his testimony in the Odebrecht case. Rafael Merchan, the former Secretary for Transparency for the President and a former diplomat, was found dead in his apartment. His testimony was expected to be on the side of Luis Fernando Andrade, the former director of the National Infrastructure Agency. Andrade was accused of using his position to push bids in favor of companies associated with Odebrecht. This is the third strange death linked to the Odebrecht case in Colombia. Indigenous leader Milagro Sala has been acquitted in a case in which she was accused of attempted murder. Prosecutors in Argentina had initially requested she be sentenced to 12 years in prison. Sala, who has been referred to as President Mauricio Macri's political prisoner, was accused of hiring someone to kill another social leader in the province of Jujuy. But the court agreed that there is no evidence linking Sala to the case. Sala has been detained since 2016 on a number of charges, including fraud and embezzlement. She denies all charges and has accused President Macri of persecuting her.
Today I was acquitted in the shooting case, one of the many lawsuits I have been involved in. Various judges wanted to pressure me with various lawsuits, but today it was proven that everything that I am going through is political and judicial persecution. It has been demonstrated that I had nothing to do in this case and that I insist this is political persecution. I want to thank you, and this is a glimmer of hope that we can still believe in justice. Thank you.
And women's issues have gained momentum in Argentina this year. Through a bill attempting to legalize abortion was defeated in August, women are increasingly standing up publicly against sexual abuse, rape, and harassment. Earlier, we were joined by Angélica Peñas de Fago, a Cordoba-based social scientist and a member of Catholics for the Right to Choose, the organization which operates across Latin America. We asked her how the struggle for free, safe, and legal abortion fits with the stance of the Catholic Church.
We support the demand for the separation between the state and the church. And we don't think as Catholics, as a Catholic person, this is a contradiction, because in fact, we believe and we support the personal belief, but we are talking about the institutional rules, the institutional role of the state, regarding the relationship with some religions. And we support this separation because we really need in Latin America, and because the colonial heritage and the decades or maybe century of heritage of this political, religious code that translate directly to civil and political policies, and this political alliance between the state and some churches affect directly the women and LGBT rights, person rights.
More stories coming up. We'll be back. Welcome back. The latest wage negotiations in Uruguay have been positive for both the government and workers. However, the private sector was left feeling disappointed. Let's find out more about the latest developments.
This year's negotiations were unprecedented, as more than 1 million workers and nearly 150,000 Uruguayan companies participated. According to the Minister of Labour and Social Affairs, Ernesto Moro, collective bargaining has never been stronger.
More than
88% of agreements are between workers and entrepreneurs. This for us is very positive because it shows the importance of collective bargaining. Half of the agreements involve 3 parties.
Out of 198 groups that negotiated labour conditions, 98% reached an agreement. In 88% of cases, workers and their employers managed to negotiate better conditions, with the government intervening in 7 cases. Secretary of the Workers' Centre, Gabriel Molina, said negotiations were successful.
From our point of view, the outcome of the salary councils was very positive. It was hard work, as we had to struggle for what we want. There were some weakness in negotiating by the government. On the other hand, the businessmen were ruthless, as they wanted to push the deregulation, which they believe is the international standard. It's already been proposed in Brazil, and total deregulation exists in Argentina with President Mauricio Macri in power.
There are still 4 groups that haven't finished negotiations, and they are expected to reach an agreement soon.
The police officers who are establishing areas of negotiation are missing, ranging from improvements at the labor level and the salary. The Board of Entities is also negotiating wage councils, and I cannot remember well, but 2 or 3 private unions are missing.
In addition to achieving salary increases, the agreements include improvements in other labour rights, such as training of workers, care services, and daycare and family benefits.
At least 8 people were killed and more than 2 dozens were injured when a bus plunged down a ravine in Peru. Peruvian media reported the bus was carrying around 55 passengers as it was heading to Lima. Emergency response teams arrived to the scene to pull bodies from the vehicle and rush survivors to a nearby hospital. And a group of shamans in Peru say they might have found the solution for world peace. Shamans dressed in their traditional attire perform various rituals with pictures of US President Donald Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. The ritual included hitting their portraits with flowers, chanting over them, and dunking them in the sea. The shamans say they want to bring positive energy and peace to the whole world.
As for the work we have done with the shamans, we met to predict good things for 2019. We have seen political. There are issues with Presidents Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, and Kim Jong-un. We've seen a little tension, but in 2019, that will decrease.
We did a ritual on the coast, the mountain and the jungle. Shamans use our strength and energy. Under the sun and the sea, we gave payment to the earth so that it may give strength and energy to the whole world. We want peace and tranquility. We don't want wars. We ask nature to calm down, because nature is reclaiming its own land with volcanoes, and more volcanoes will emerge.
Dominica's government is set to start construction on a geothermal energy plant in 2019. The plant is to be built in the Rousseau Valley on the outskirts of the capital. It will be a major boost to the Caribbean island, which aims to be the world's first climate-resilient country. Energy Minister Ian Douglas said on local radio that the country has made great progress in the geothermal development program. And the Caribbean has lost one of its distinguished legal luminaries. Sir Fenton Ramza has passed away. The Queen's Counsel and former Attorney General of Guyana died in Barbados of natural causes. He was 89. Sir Fenton enjoyed a legal career throughout the Caribbean that spanned 6 decades. He holds the record among attorneys in the English-speaking Caribbean as having made the most appearances in the Judicial Committee of the London-based Privy Council. He was also at the forefront of the independence movement in Guyana. We're taking one last break, but stay with us. Welcome back. The partial government shutdown in the United States will continue into next year. The shutdown has now entered its 7th day. It was caused by a deadlock over President Donald Trump's proposal to build a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border. Trump has insisted that taxpayers should pay the $5 billion required to build the wall. His proposal was opposed by Democrats and some Republicans, leading to the shutdown.
I hope it doesn't take weeks. It's been far too long for the government worker. But to date, I do not know whether the distinguished colleagues across the aisle, my friends, have come to any number that the president can sign, and what he feels very strongly about in terms of border security.
An Israeli human rights group has revealed that authorities have approved the construction of hundreds of Jewish-only settlement units in occupied East Jerusalem. According to Peace Now, Israeli authorities have given the go-ahead for the construction of 2,191 new units in East Jerusalem's Givat Ziv settlement. International law regards both the West Bank and East Jerusalem as occupied territories and considers the building of settlements in these areas by Israel as illegal. Hundreds of people in Jordan have braved the heavy rains to protest against austerity measures backed by the International Monetary Fund. The youth-led movement has been demonstrating in Amman for over a month. They are asking for political and economic reforms against corruption and have spoken out against Prime Minister Omar Razaz, who was appointed to pass new fiscal measures to reduce the deficit. The United Arab Emirates has reopened its embassy in Damascus 8 years after it was closed when the Syrian conflict began in 2011. The UAE said that the decision aimed to improve ties with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and curb risks of regional interference in Arab and Syrian affairs. The UAE was once one of the states in the region that backed armed groups opposed to President Assad. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is in Brazil to attend the inauguration of President-elect Jair Bolsonaro. This is the first trip by an Israeli premier to Brazil. Netanyahu will also hold talks with U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on the sidelines of the event on January 1st. The Israeli Prime Minister is expected to discuss with Bolsonaro the moving of the Brazilian embassy in his country to Jerusalem. He has spent 6 years living in Ecuador's London embassy. Julian Assange rang the doorbell, walked in and asked for political asylum, or so the story goes. Let's take a look at how the WikiLeaks founder became the world's most famous unwelcome guest.
This window, in a brick-covered building, in a quiet neighborhood of London, has been the home of one of the most controversial journalists. This is where Julian Assange, founder of WikiLeaks, has been in asylum since 2012. Inside the embassy of Ecuador, he's the man behind the publishing of thousands of documents that proved, among other things, what crimes committed by the US. Assange feared for his life if the US got hold of him. The UN ruled that the case against him was arbitrary and he must be allowed to walk free. It appeared to be a victory.
Today is an important victory for me and for the UN human rights system. But it by no means erases 7 years without charge why my children grew up without me. That is not something that I can forgive. It is not something that I can forget.
Rallies outside the embassy demanded his freedom and freedom of publishing. The original Swedish case against him had already been dropped, but there were still many interests in the UK and the US that prevented him from defending himself.
The truth is that Julian Assange has never been charged with anything. The allegations that were made against him of sexual assaults were highly dubious, to say the least, and more than a year ago Sweden actually dropped any investigation into these allegations. The United Nations ruled 3 years ago that Julian was being held unreasonably and illegally, and yet still the British authorities refused to let him go. And only in February a British judge ruled that if Julian tries to leave the embassy, he will be subject to arrest for breach of bail conditions.
In the US, Assange was also considered a hero for publishing what a US former intelligence agent leaked: that the US military had killed civilians and committed other crimes, but yet had gone unpunished. For years, Assange has strongly criticized the US attempt to have him extradited from the UK to face charges under anti-terrorism laws. He believed it was also an attempt to silence his work and the US military injustice that continued unabated. But then a changing regime in Ecuador adversely affected his asylum status. Under the new president, Lenin Moreno, things did not go well. His predecessor, Rafael Correa, had given the WikiLeaks founder asylum to protect him. Moreno will not do the same. In fact, the new president called Assange a hacker and accused him of jeopardizing Ecuador's relationship with the UK. Then, Moreno's administration cut off all Assange's internet access and visits at the embassy, saying he had been interfering in other countries' matters.
I have never been in favor of the activities that Mr. Assange does. I have never been in favor of reading people's private emails, no matter how valuable the information is, and to reveal certain undesirable acts by governments or people.
Meanwhile, Ecuador's foreign ministry tried to find a solution by offering him citizenship and also seeking to give him a diplomatic position.
Ecuador is exploring other ways to resolve this issue, always in dialogue with the United Kingdom. For example, a mediation with authorities, other countries or international organizations to reach a just, definitive and dignified solution for everyone, under the rules of international law.
But all efforts were shut down, and Moreno's government seems to be waiting for Assange's long night inside the embassy to finally end. Meanwhile, defenders of free speech hope for a new tomorrow, when those who decide to publish the unwanted truth can walk with their heads held high.
A ship carrying over 300 migrants who were rescued by humanitarian organization Open Arms has arrived in Spain. The government authorized the ship to dock after denials by both Malta and Italy, resulting in migrants spending their Christmas on the chilly waters of the Mediterranean. Thousands of migrants hoping to reach Europe to escape poverty and war have died while trying to cross the Mediterranean Sea. After a dangerous 54-day journey, a man from the United States has made history as the first person in the world to cross the Antarctica on foot unassisted. Colin O'Brady completed a nearly 1,600 kilometers journey across the frozen continent while dragging his equipment on a sled weighing nearly 180 kilograms. His voyage was tracked by GPS, and the 33-year-old adventurer provided daily updates on his website and Instagram. British Army Captain Louis Rudd also set out to compete with O'Brady, but is yet to finish the crossing.
Take your first step.
And with that, we come to the end of this news brief, but this and many other stories, you can read them on our website at telesurenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, we are on StarSat channel 461 in South Africa and 539 in Nigeria. And we're on social media as well. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.